Hey friends, welcome to the Swing My Heart podcast with your host, Kristen,
Nicole,
and Hannah. Come join our porch swing conversations.
filled with lots of faith, hope, and heart.
Hey, Postables.
We're back with part 2 of our recap of Signs You Have Delivered, the Vows We Have Made. Today we will be taking a deeper dive into some of the lessons that we learned from the movie. But before we do that, Hannah, would you like to share a little bit about how you became a postable?
Yes, of course. So I've been a postable for many years now. I think I started watching it right around the time, probably right after season 1 came out. I just remember at the time, my family and I joined this TV service where we would get DVDs in the mail. And I just remember we'd never heard of Signs You Have Delivered. At this time, we didn't have cable. We were big Hallmark fans, but we just had we'd never heard of Signs You Have Delivered. We didn't even know what it was. And I remember, I think my mom ordered the DVD for us to watch. And at this time, we didn't know that it was a series. We didn't even know that there was a pilot movie at the time. We just ordered the DVD. So we're like, let's try this. This seems cute. So we'll try it. And we started watching it and we really got into it. Like we were just amazed by how beautiful Martha's writing is and just like the storylines and the characters, and like we really got into it. And so I definitely think at that time, I'm not sure if there were any other movies out at the time. I think it was just the pilot in the first season. And so, yeah, I would say I've been a postable for many years. So I've been watching the show for a long time. And so after it going on a hiatus for a few years, it was such a blessing to hear that the show was coming back, because I feel like it's been so long since I've watched it. I feel like there's been so many other shows that I've got into in the period of time that it hasn't been out that I kind of forgot how good it was. Like I love Signs So Delivered. I remember I've watched it many times over the years and I always loved it. And so it's just such a blessing to see that it came back and just to see the journey that the characters have been on. I mean, I loved the last movie. I loved Norma and Rita's wedding. That was just such a great, yeah, that movie was amazing. And to see Oliver and Shane's get engaged, that was such like a beautiful end to that movie. And like I just wanted more. I was like, when is this wedding gonna happen? And I honestly remember after that came out, I was like, this is probably gonna take it's probably going to take a few movies before we finally get to the wedding, because I feel like in Hallmark Channel all that stuff is very much dragged out. And so like I was so surprised and so happy to hear when this next installment was coming out, and then to find out that their wedding was going to be in this movie, I was so excited. So yeah, I've been a postable for many years and I love it.
I was too, yeah. I was really excited to hear that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to get into the lessons that you've learned from watching The Vows We Have Made?
Yes, of course. This movie just was packed full of so many things that I could take into my own life. And I feel like I could definitely relate to a lot of the lessons in this movie. And I think when I think about this movie, yes, the wedding was amazing and it was such a great end to the movie. And I think like it was about time that we got there. But I think the thing that stands out to most to me about this movie was Oliver's whole storyline. I just think there's so many beautiful lessons we can take from that whole storyline. And I feel like there's a lot of things that I can take from my own life as well. And I feel like it was really good for me to see Oliver's journey with all the things that he's been through, with his fears that he has, losing his mom and then his wife leaving him, and just all of the things that happen in his life. And so for me to just see that was just such a beautiful reminder to me of how, there's going to be times in our life when, we feel really alone. And but the beauty of that is that we aren't alone. No, we're not alone. And I think that was just the most beautiful message from this movie, is that we're not alone, in the fact that God is always there.
Yes.
And I think that's what I love the most about this movie, was that it just really showed that. And I think when I think back to this movie and I think about one of my favorite lessons from the movie, and one quote that really stands out to me, was when Oliver and Shane were in the church and they were talking about Oliver's situation after everything had happened and him losing his mom, and how the whole story with the Dumbarton Oaks and with the bear, and how when he was going through that period in his life where he felt so alone, he was so, sad and frustrated that, his mom left and his mom wasn't
Yeah.
coming back. That storyline really gets me. And there's a quote that really stood out to me from that storyline. And it was when Shane said that sacred places have a way of turning into lost and found. And I think for me, that's the quote that stands out the most to me. And the reason that that stands out to me is because it's such a beautiful reminder.
Wasn't that in the scene in the yellow when they were giving the gifts?
You were correct. I think what I'm thinking of is when they were in the church and they were talking about leaving it at the altar, which
Yes,
segues into this. Yes, I'm sorry. My timeline's a little bit off there, but that whole storyline, I feel like they both parallel each other so well.
I
And they
agree.
go to it kind of all, goes together in my head because it's all one big storyline. So thank you for that. I feel like this just has so much depth to it. That one little line, this one little part of the story, part of the movie is just so powerful. And I think it's really powerful because I think it's something that we can take into our own lives. Is in our own lives when things go really wrong, like with Oliver, and where I've already talked about this, but where he loses his mom and his mom leaves him. And then he goes through that pain all over again when his wife leaves him. And he feels like, he's so alone. And I feel like it's just such a beautiful moment when he's talking to Shane and Shane finds out about Dumbarton Oaks, the bear that he got with his mom. And how after his mom left, I think it was the second time, he was planning to throw that bear out because he was so sad and so, angry. Angry that his mom would leave him.
That he was furious.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like that really gets me because it's in those moments in our own lives. Like, I know I've had times in my life where I've had close people in my life, really close friends of mine, people who were like family, they left me. And I've had times in my life where I was like, why would they do that? I never did anything to them. Why would they decide, to just, not want to be in my life anymore? It's in those times in your life when you just, sometimes you have that question, you're like, why? And you can become really bitter and really angry about it because you're like, I don't feel like I deserve this, like nobody deserves to have that, especially when like you don't do anything wrong. And so I think in this situation to see this, I feel like when you think about that quote, how he was so angry, he was so furious with his mom that he was mad enough to throw that bear away. But then the fact that he didn't throw it away, he decides to the altar. Yes. And I think what gets me so much about that is that's like in our own lives when we go through something that's so hard and so tragic in some moments, or just things that are so much out of our control. We can get to those points in our life where we feel so down, so angry, so bitter about something that we just want to, we just want to throw it away because we're mad. We just want to say, nope, just toss it aside. Like that's our way of dealing with it instead of really like choosing, to give it up to God. It's those moments in there's life when it's really hard to do that. It can be really hard to take that thing in our life that's really hard to give up, that thing that we want to hold on to with all of our might. We want to have control of it. It's really hard to give up control and give it to God. But the thing about this storyline that's really powerful to me, and it's a great reminder to me, that in those moments in life, we shouldn't just throw those things away. We shouldn't just toss them aside. We should leave them at the altar. We should go to God and we should, you know what, God, this is really hard. I feel like I can't hold on to this thing anymore. I don't want to give it away. I want to hold on to it. I want to take control of it. I don't want to give it up to you because if I give it up to you, I don't know what that means. I might lose it. I might never get it back. And you don't know. But it's in those moments in life when you really have to put your trust in God and you really have to say, you know what, God?
It's really true. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what, God, you love me more than anything in this world. You know what is best for me. You have a plan. I'm going to give it over to you and I'm going to trust that you're going to do what is right. And so it's in those moments, and this is why I really love the quote about sacred spaces often have a way of turning into lost and found, where I feel like it's that situation where if you give it up to God, you leave it at the altar. It may be hard because you may feel like, wow, when you give this up, you feel like you're going to lose it because you feel like it's gone forever. You're like, okay, I'm giving up. Okay, that's it. Like, nothing's going to come of this. But then you realize that when you finally can give it up and you finally have that trust in God, maybe the answer isn't what you want. Maybe it's something completely different. Maybe it's going to take a long time. Maybe it's going to take a short time. You don't know the length of time that it's going to take, but you do know that God's going to ultimately give it back to you. It might not be exactly what you wanted. Like with Oliver, his mom didn't come back. His wife divorced him. His wife left him. But what did he get in return? He got something so much better.
He did.
He got Shane.
He got
And
Shane.
that's not, yeah, and that's not something that he ever expected. He never expected to get Shane.
He got Shane and he got his father back.
Exactly, and his father back as well. Yes, and see, so it's in those moments in our life. Sometimes, we don't know why things happen. We really don't. And sometimes things just feel like they're very unfair. But when we give those things up to God and we trust that He has a better plan for us, we're going to find those things again. And it might not be the exact thing that we lost, but it might be something better. And so that's why this quote stands out so much to me. And I think it's just such a beautiful reminder that in our life these things are going to happen, but if we give them up to God, we're going to get back something so much better than we could ever imagine, because God loves us and He's there and He knows. So that's something that really stood out to me from like that whole storyline. And it was also just so beautiful to just see that character growth too, to see how, Oliver struggled most of this movie with these feelings that he was having, and the fact that, he just felt like, he had this internal thing that was going on inside of him where ultimately, like, you didn't exactly know what it was. Like, you kind of knew what it was. You kind of knew that he was dealing with that whole thing. Like, well, like, I feel like I'm going to always be alone. What if Shane leaves me too? Like,
yeah, the first sign I got of worry or fear was the scene when he was talking to Norman about the wedding gifts.
He mentions that he has to give her a wedding gift, going through the list of things.
Yeah, Norman's, trying to give him advice on a gift to give Shane, and Oliver asks him a question, and Norman says, how about something that lasts forever? And you can see the look on Oliver's face because he's never experienced love that lasts forever. And then Norman mentions something about 50th wedding anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, unfortunately, Oliver has never gotten to a 50th wedding anniversary, which is really sad.
Right. I mean, he's not that old, but like he hasn't even gotten, to like 10, 5. I think those little,
it breaks my heart.
Yeah, right. Those little bits of worry that he was having were sprinkled throughout the movie, but I don't think like the fact that they like dragged that out for so long to the point where it's like he finally had to say it. I really like the way that they did that because it was very subtle, but like this whole time I was just waiting for something to come out. I feel like these little things, like this type of storyline is something that I would have really liked to see in, some other things that I've watched, I feel like there's been these things where like sometimes, these things happen, but they never really come out. Like they kind of just get pushed to the side. So I love it that Martha wrote it in such a way that didn't get pushed aside. It wasn't like, oh no, Oliver's fine. Yeah, he was divorced, his mom left him, but like that doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter. That's not an important part of the story. No, of course it's an important part of the story. And I love it that Martha wrote that into Oliver's character arc.
I do too, yeah. There was a line in the beginning when Shane, Oliver, Rita, and Norman had just gone over the letter. Like Oliver had just read the letter from Robin. Mm-hmm. And he says, if this boy has managed to survive, he's still waiting for someone he loves to come back. I mentioned in part 1 of our recap that was a parallel to Oliver.
Right. Yeah, I didn't even catch that, but that is a great point. Yeah. Definitely a parallel for sure. Yeah. Yeah, like I couldn't imagine going through it in that way. Like I've mentioned before, I have gone through some similar things with close people that were in my life, but never like that. And I mean, I do have family members who have gone through things that Oliver has gone through, and it's not an easy situation at all, and it's really tough. And so I just love that that was tackled in this movie. That was like a big part of this movie was Oliver having to, overcome that. And I think that ties in really well to like my favorite part of the whole movie, which was the scene in the DLO with Shane and Oliver.
Everyone knows it.
Favorite scene.
Everyone's favorite scene.
Yes, that's
besides the wedding, of course.
Right. Honestly, I'm not gonna let that. I love that more than the wedding. I just did. To me, it spoke to me way more than the wedding because, like, I feel like that's just like everything. That's just that's everything. And
I totally agree. I mean, the wedding's a given, but the DLO scene was
right.
Amazing. And I mentioned it Kristen and I mentioned it in our recap, but we need to give props to Eric and Kristen because their acting was incredible.
Oh, yes. Phenomenal. For sure. Especially Kristen. I don't know how somebody can repeat the same line 4 times in a row and say it in a unique way, a way that is completely raw every single time.
It just
beautiful. For me, those little lines, I will never leave you. This ties back to the conversation we were having about leaving it at the altar. That's God's promise to us. I will never leave you nor forsake you in Isaiah.
I agree.
And the fact that that was portrayed in this movie like that was just phenomenal. And to just hear before that Oliver admit that that was his fear.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why, yeah, I know. And this is why, I can really relate to this because that's always been my greatest fear is of people leaving me. And to just hear that in the movie really touched my heart to know that, you know what, God is always there, and the people in our life who love us and who are there for us, they won't leave us either. They're there. They're there to stay. And so that was just such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful line. Just a beautiful scene. And very touching. Very touching.
Beautiful, powerful, emotional.
Oh, yes.
That has to be one of the best scenes in the entire canon. Hands down.
Hands down, definitely, for sure.
There's a lot of amazing scenes, but I would have to say that this particular scene in the DLO beats the chapel scene in Lost Without You. Although I love the chapel scene. That's one of my top favorites too, but
I mean, I said it before, that scene tops the wedding for me. I said it before, it tops all of them for me. It just does, just because it's so beautiful and it's so relatable for me, because I totally felt all over there. I totally felt all over there. And I think it's just such a beautiful scene to happen before the wedding. That happens. And it was the night before the wedding.
It was the night before the wedding. And before the movie came out, before the movie was released, I had a feeling that there would be an emotional scene. I didn't know when in the movie it would be.
Right.
But I had a feeling that there would be an emotional scene between Shane and Oliver at some point. Right. Where he finally confronts his pain and fear and everything that he had been holding, or everything that he had kept inside for so long.
Right. I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, I heard there were cries all around at the table read. I mean, I can see why now. Yeah.
I can too.
Yeah. And that wedding, the vows.
The vows were beautiful.
I mean, I loved how they recited so many verses from the Bible. That was just beautiful. That was just the passage where they talked, the passage from Ruth where they were like,
Wherever you go, I will
I'll
go.
go
Where
where
you
you say,
stay, I will
stay,
stay.
I'll stay. Yes, your God shall be my God,
God,
for my people. Yes. I
my
mean
yeah,
that I've never heard
beautiful.
that in wedding vows before, and I love that. Especially after seeing their storyline for this movie.
I do
That
too.
was just that was beautiful. I love
Very
that.
powerful. Song of
Very,
Solomon, Ecclesiastes,
mm-hmm.
Isaiah. When you
Yep.
walk through the fire, you will not be burned.
Oh, that got me. That got
And
me.
that, in a way, was a parallel to, I believe Kristen mentioned it in our recap, but that was a parallel to the storyline, about the firefighters.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Those verses definitely tied in to the storyline for sure. And they were put beautifully. I love seeing those parallels like that, how stories can sometimes imitate what's in a scripture and how it can
Mm-hmm.
kind of play out. And I love to see that.
I
I love
agree.
so beautiful.
Martha is an incredible weaver.
She is. She is definitely. I would, her brain is amazing. Just the
We
story.
need more of
Oh
we
yeah.
need more of Martha's amazing
Oh
writing on SSD.
yes. And other movies as well.
And other movies,
We
yeah,
just need
too,
more
of
of her
course.
writing. We need more of her writing.
Yes, we need more of her writing, but especially Signed, Sealed, Delivered.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And another thing that was beautiful about this movie too, that really stood out to me, was Norman and Rita's storyline with
I
the
loved their storyline in
and
this movie.
Charlie at the end. That got me when they invited Charlie to come live with them and the baby.
That was
And
really sweet. I loved Rita and Norman's storyline.
that got me. And especially like when Rita was talking about how they should adopt Charlie's baby, and then Norman was like, we shouldn't twist the timing.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh my gosh, Norman.
That was
deep.
really sweet.
That was deep and so sweet. And I was just like,
I
yeah,
believe the line was, "What if she's not our miracle? What if we're hers?" Or something
that
along those
one,
lines.
that one. Yes. That one, I got chills when he said that.
I did too.
I love that one, and I actually forgot about that one, so thank you for bringing it up, because that one was so powerful. And I think that's so true. Like in our lives, like sometimes, we might, I feel like sometimes we can be so focused on ourselves and, finding our miracles, that we can forget that sometimes maybe things happen for a reason, so that we can be a part of someone else's miracle. We can be, we
Mm-hmm.
can be used, we're lights. We can be lights in the darkness, and we can, encourage others, and we can be there to lift them up in hard times. And I think that that's just such like a beautiful storyline too, just to see how, how selfless Norman and Rita were in that moment,
Yeah.
because they wanted a baby so much, but like, you know what, no, like this is Charlie's miracle, this is her baby, she needs to keep this baby, and let's help her. Let's
Mm-hmm.
be her miracle, let's save her, let's be there. So
I
I thought
love,
it was beautiful.
I love Norman and Rita.
Me too. They're such
Such
a
a sweet couple.
unique couple. I love them. Yes. I mean, overall, this movie was just really beautiful, and even the storyline with the firefighters and the
Yeah.
little boy, and to just see, like, of course, like always, how they always solve the letter, the mystery of the letter. And one thing that I thought was really interesting about this movie is that they solved it a lot earlier.
They did, yeah.
I definitely feel like this movie felt different because, the letter was solved like so much earlier. Like I definitely noticed that, because like in all the other ones, they're basically, trying to solve the letter to like the very end. And so
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was really interesting how it happened, so much earlier. But I think it was right that it should have happened early, because, there was so much more with Oliver and Shane and all of that stuff that needed to be resolved. And that really, the end of the movie really deserved to be dedicated to that. But I just thought it was interesting, like the timeline of how they solved the letter. And I thought it was really sweet how, at the end, how they found Fred and how they brought him back to the boy.
Yeah.
And how it's like 10 years later and he's so much older, and how emotional he
Mm-hmm.
got just by seeing Fred. And I just thought that was such a beautiful storyline.
It was a beautiful scene.
And to hear how his mother decided to be a firefighter after what happened to her husband.
Lieutenant Thomas Walker.
Yeah. that got me. I was like, wow, like what strength that woman has.
That scene
That
really was emotional. I was in
Mhm.
tears watching it.
Yeah. This is
And the
very
scene that really stood out to me from the scene with Robin and Shane and Oliver, I mentioned this in the recap, but Shane asks, it doesn't worry him now that you're fighting fires too. And Robin says, we've learned something about loss through all of this. Being afraid to lose someone someday steals the joy of having them today.
very
It's
true.
really true.
Very true. Yeah,
And it can apply to anyone.
it really can.
Just enjoying what you have. And like I mentioned in the recap about the callback to the impossible dream, enjoy the simple little things right in front of you, or they could be gone before you know it.
Never take anything for granted. Never take anyone for granted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very true. That's such a beautiful reminder for sure. Be thankful for every moment you have with every person in your life.
Mm-hmm. And you see in that scene the looks between Shane and Oliver, and they both,
They felt that.
yeah, they really felt it. I agree.
This brings up another scene to my mind of how Oliver and Shane are walking outside, and he has that flashback to his Sunday school teacher, and then how he talks about how he needs to, yes, and then he talks about how
when to hold on,
and when to let go. Shane grabs him, and she's like, "Well, I'm gonna hold on.
I'm gonna hold on."
I love that. That was so cute.
I agree. I loved that little short but sweet moment between them.
Exactly. Ties back to holding on what matters most to you.
Exactly. There was another line that really stuck out to me in this movie, and it was in the scene with Sharon and Oliver, and she's asking him about his father, and he says that he wasn't around when Holly left.
Right.
And Sharon says, well, who was there to help you through? And he says, I had my faith. Which is really important, because faith is the most important thing.
It is. Yes, faith in God. I mean, God is always there. And I think that really ties back to this whole conversation, is that, leave it at the altar, hold on, because God is there. Don't give up. Don't give up hope. Trust in him, lean on him when times are tough.
Trust the timing.
Exactly. Trust the timing. Yes, very good job. Good job. Yes, trust the timing. Never let go, because he will never leave us.
Nope.
He won't. And I think that was the overwhelming message of this movie, so that we're not alone.
I could not agree more. Such beautiful messages all throughout this movie.
All throughout. And as are in every single SSD movie.
Every single one, yes.
They all have such beautiful, beautiful messages, but I think this one just really stands out, just because I feel like it ties them all together so beautifully, and just really shows like what the overwhelming theme of this is just, love and faith and
hope.
Having hope. Yes, and not giving up. Beautiful.
Yeah. I think that's about it. Do you have anything else that you wanted to share?
I think I'm good. I think that about covers it. I mean, it's just such a good movie. I mean, it really was such a beautiful movie.
I loved it. 10 out of 10 for me.
Oh, yes, for sure. 10 out of 10. I'm ready for the next one.
I'm ready for the next one, too. We need more.
Definitely.
I would have to say that, like I mentioned in our second to last episode, I love all of the episodes and all of the movies. And before the Vows We Have Made was released, my number one favorite movie in the canon was Lost Without You. But I would probably have to say that now the Vows We Have Made is number one.
Yes.
And Lost Without You is number 2. And To the Altar is number 3.
I think I would have to say, I don't know, I think it's a toss-up between To the Altar for me, and Higher Ground.
Yeah, To the Altar and Higher Ground are pretty much, it's a toss-up for the number 3 spot. It's so hard because they're all so good.
It is. And see, like, I've seen these movies so many times, but I feel like I definitely need to get caught up again, because I feel like I forget some of the, like, all the beautiful messages in the other ones. Those are just the 2 ones that I can remember the most that really stand out to me. But they're all just so beautiful.
They're all amazing. It's so hard to pick just one. I cannot pick just one. It's impossible.
It is. For sure. But I would say message-wise, the overwhelming theme of this movie was my favorite, for sure.
Yeah.
Just because of that storyline.
It was really beautiful.
Yes.
And there's so many more stories to tell.
There really is.
Now with 2 married couples in the DLO.
Yes. I can only imagine the stories they can tell with that. That would be so interesting.
I would love to see it.
Me too.
Rita and Norman with baby Eleanor and Charlie.
Yes.
And Shane and Oliver navigating married life.
Yeah, and spending their evenings on the porch swing.
Yes.
With the roses.
And she has 2 porch swings now.
Yeah, she does. You're right.
Which I love that.
We love things on this podcast. It's our favorite thing.
And of course, many storylines with Joe. And I would love to see Sharon again.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
She was a great addition.
She really was. At first, I was a little bit scared of her. I'm not going to lie. And then as we got to know her better, I was like, okay, I like her, especially when she had that talk with Oliver. That was beautiful. And see, that's something I forgot to mention from earlier too, is that like one of those things that Oliver got back was he gained a new mom.
He gained the mother that he never had.
Exactly. He did. And it was with somebody who was very unlikely to be someone, you would never imagine that Sharon would be the person who would be the mother that he never had. But
or as she said, she wants to be the mother that he deserves.
Exactly. And at the same time, it's like that in our life. Sometimes we never know. We have to give people a chance, because you never know. They might surprise you.
I totally agree. And Sherry Miller nailed her role as Sharon McInerney.
She did. Definitely.
Great casting choice by Martha.
Oh yes, for sure, definitely. And her and Shane her and Kristen, I should say, look very similar too.
I can definitely see that. I can see the resemblance.
Yeah, so great casting choice there all around.
And also, I could see the resemblance between Eric and Gregory as well. Great casting choice.
It's definitely there. Great, awesome casting choices for sure.
And of course, love to see more Ramon and Hazel.
Oh yes. Ramon always makes me laugh. He's an interesting one, that's for sure, but I love him.
Ramon is awesome. So is Hazel.
Yes, definitely love Hazel as well.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up our part 2 recap of Signed, Sealed, Delivered, The Vows We Have Made. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Have a great day.
Have a great day, Postables.
Bye.
Bye.